Here's the issue with college students voting when they are tourists, out of towners, right? So it goes back to the issue of sovereignty. You have national sovereignty, and then you also have state sovereignty, right? So um, uh, the the people who actually reside in that state, who have grown up in that state, whose family is from that state, um they have a right for their vote to be prioritized over the opinion of somebody who's from out of town and who has no intention of staying in that state. Does that make sense? It's kind of like um I've heard a really good argument made that there should be a state level electoral college, and I'm very strongly in favor of that. For going towards the issue of state sovereignty and towards preserving the culture of certain regions, right? Um, and then real quick on homeless people voting, look, universal suffrage was a mistake. If you go back and read what our founding fathers wrote about um, how they structured the government and why, and what they believed about voting rights, they did not believe that that every Tom, Dick, and Harry should be able to go to the polls and vote, because I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of stupid people out there in this world. There's a lot of retards who have no business voting whatsoever. Um, Man, women, black, white, whoever. So that's all I have to say on about that.
Thank you, Lisa. Monkey.
Yeah, if you go to France to study for 4 years, you don't get to vote in France. You send your ballot to your home state. If you go to Italy to study for 4 years, you send your ballot home to your home state. That applies for every state. You don't get to, oh, well, but I'm in this district in France, so I got rights here. No, that's not how that works. And just because you're a citizen and have rights to the Constitution of the US, it doesn't mean you have rights to the Constitution of every state, because every state has a separate constitution and you're not eligible. It's just not the way it works. As far as the homeless have a right to vote in what district? They don't have a home. What district? What Congress are they going to pick? They don't have a home. Oh, yeah, no, I live in this general area and I move whenever I want. That doesn't make sense. That is not only that, I completely agree about universal suffrage. It was never the plan. It was an absolute mistake. And there's no way you can determine where a homeless person is gonna what district. It doesn't make sense. It's just touchy feely things that sound emotionally right. I don't think you thought. I think you felt. I think people feel, but they don't think. That's all.
Thank you, Monkey. Jose, you're up next.
Lisa, I would agree with you except for one thing on that change it to the change into the Electoral College. The reason I disagree is simple. The Virginia governor, that newly elected, very woke governor, has lost every chance she's had against gun control. So she's doing something. She just passed a law in her state that all electoral votes in Virginia, if it passes scrutiny of the state Supreme Court, will go to whoever won the popular vote nationally. So it doesn't matter if there's enough votes to carry off, and let's say half of it goes Republican, half goes Democrat. No, popular vote wins all the votes. That's why I think that idea needs to die and die immediately about changing the way the um, the current voting system goes through. Okay, nothing personal. Lisa. I
I'm
love
sorry,
you very
Jose.
much.
Jose, I don't understand your argument. Can you go
Yeah,
back and re-explain that? I didn't understand.
sure.
I just want to make
Okay.
sure I understand your argument.
How many, you're in Texas? How many ballots do you have? How many county electoral votes does your state have?
Oh, 50, I want to 50 something. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay. Has any candidate won every single one of those before?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess probably not.
Okay. How would you like it if someone, let's say, won the popular vote and all of the candidates have to vote for that person? That's what she's saying in Virginia. Popular vote in total, countrywide.
Which is the opposite of what I'm arguing for. So
Exactly.
I'm not understanding your point.
Well, my point is that's what's being pressed out in Virginia, and that's what she's termed it, to correct the irregularities in the college election.
Let's discuss this more later. I still don't understand your point, but I don't want to take up too much time.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, great. Next is Halda.
Yeah. And this is to Elisa. Well, in general, I will say that I'm completely opposed to the Electoral College. I think it's an outdated system, and I think we are fully intelligent enough and able to count the populace vote accurately, and that is who should be electing our officials are the people. This nation is supposedly run by the people, so therefore the people should be the ones doing the elections. And I think the Electoral College can just leave. But what I'm curious about was your criteria for voting. So how exactly do we determine who's too stupid to vote, who has the right to vote? I mean, do they have to own homes? Do they have to make a certain amount of income? Do they have to have a certain IQ? Do they have to have certain political or religious beliefs? If we don't allow everybody, from the age of 18 and up to vote, then we would no longer be the supposed land of the free. So I'm just curious what that criteria would look like. And as for homeless people, I actually am a little bit opposed to that too. I think that anybody who's an American citizen should have the right to vote. Now, the problem, of course, with homelessness is that they don't have an address. So, therefore, the chances of them being able to have an adequate, accurate, qualifying ID is pretty slim. So therefore they've probably already ruled themselves out for being qualified to vote. But other than that, if they have one, and if they can somehow provide that address, I do think that they should have the right to vote. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Halda. Next is Sherry.
First, I just wanted to address Samantha on if I'm if I come from Pennsylvania and I'm living in New York because that's where I'm going to school. Okay, but the problem is that's why we need a real ID where you have to show your identification and it shows your address, period. That's it. You have to show your address and it has to be real. If you want to change your address to New York, go right ahead. But it does get abused in the universities. It gets abused a lot, especially in California. Now I'm going to talk about the homeless. I have experience in this. I was a volunteer for a homeless shelter here in Cobb County, Georgia. And I started out just doing a workshop on victim or victory, your choice, trying to change their mindset to keep them from continually being homeless, per se. But somehow I got coaxed into being a caseworker, even though I had no license and no education. It was the most heartbreaking and yet the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. But part of what we did is if, they need ID so they can get a job, they need, et cetera, to get a job. And so we would allow them to use the address of the shelter so that they could apply for a new birth certificate. Because a lot of these people move, they lose their documents through the way. And so we'd allow them to use that as an address. But at the same time, They were only residents for 3 months after it, and sometimes less than 3 months because you didn't follow the program and got kicked out. There were requirements. And then we had the chronic homeless, which were the people who went to our shelter for 3 months and they went to another one that lasted 3 months and they shopped around and kept moving around. We'd see people a year later back to our shelter again. It's very sad. It's very sad. A lot of these people just want to be homeless. They don't want to have a job. They don't want to have bills, etc. So letting the homeless vote is fine with me as long as they have a real ID with an actual address on it. But if your address is only good for 3 months, I don't know how that's going to end up making sense. So I'm not against them voting. I'm just bringing it back to the whole thing about real ID. And to Doc, we vehemently disagree on this. There's a reason we have an electoral college and not just populist vote. And that is because if you're running for office and all you need is the populist vote, you're only going to Atlanta, you're only going to Chicago, you're only going to New York City, you're only going to Los Angeles. You're not visiting the people in Midwestern America and listening to them and letting their vote count just as much as the popular vote. They're not talking to farmers. And that's why it's a republic and not a full democracy.
Thanks, Sherry. Noah, you're next.
And the electoral college could be its own topic, so I'm not even going to get into that. But I do agree with Sherry about college students. When I was, I'll give a quick story. When I was in college, when I was in university, I was in I lived in an adjacent county, and they were trying to register me to vote in the county that my school was in. And I had to repeatedly tell them, no, I'm a commuter student. I don't need to, register to vote in this county. And they, it was like I was talking to a brick wall to them. So I think they should vote in their home address where they live instead of like going to like other state, in that state. But I digress. Going back to Monkey's point about the homeless, Monkey, I love you, but I disagree. The homeless should be allowed to vote, especially if they're U.S. citizens. When we do like counts for food pantries, uh, in food pantry, we have a area on our sheet that they can mark if they're homeless and they can still get food. Um, Now it is true, like they lose their documents and stuff, but if they have a real ID, um, and they keep that ID, it shouldn't be an issue. But I mean, I think if you're a U.S. citizen, you should be allowed to vote. Um, but I don't want to go too more into that. It could take forever.
Thanks, Noah. Kathy?
So I have 2 points to make. First, all due respect, Monkey, I do disagree with you. I work in many programs where we have helped homeless get themselves reestablished and jobs, and part of getting you back on your feet is having an address, because you can't be employed if you don't have an address. And as long as you have a valid address, you can get a real ID, and those criteria alone should allow you to vote. As for Helda, I love you, but I disagree with you in terms of getting rid of the Electoral College. There's a reason we have it, and we are a republic. We're not a full democracy.
Thank you, Kathy. Mujef.
Sorry, I was a little late. I had to do something for my mom's birthday. So, two things. One, with regards to the existence of the Electoral College or the Senate as it was set up, those two institutions were included during the founding of this country for very specific reasons, particularly to act or exist as a institutional safeguard against flash in the pan ideas, mobocracy, any other number of things. So Hamilton in Federalist 68 defended the Electoral College against direct popular election because he said, if I remember correctly, the sense of the people, so large, frequently elected assemblies are prone to yield to the impulse of the sudden and the violent passions, and to be seduced by factious leaders in intemperate and pernicious resolution. In other words, you get somebody who takes advantage of people's emotions, and they say this has to happen. The reason that leftists want to go to a direct democracy is because they view that the demographic trend is on their side and they see those things as an impediment. And if you want to blow them out of the water and show just how full of shit they really are, just say, great, did you let you support direct democracy? Would you support a direct democracy, say, September 12th, 2001? So I've asked them that. They kind of, well, of course not, because we'd have dropped 35 nuclear weapons across the Middle East, like some people were advocating. So, yeah, the reason why Plato included in his book, The Republic, direct democracies as one of the three evil governments is exactly why Hamilton and the founding fathers included the Senate and the Electoral College into our overall government the way they did. As far as like letting the homeless vote in ID, that we definitely need an act like ID shouldn't be tied to someone's address. It needs to be tied to someone's citizenship. And I would contend, if I'm correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, the address was like a way to best, like one of the better ways to vet if they were a citizen traditionally. I would contend we should have a national ID card that eliminates all of the forms of ID and it's tied to a national biometric database that outlines you are exactly who you are, and this is a citizen with this biometric data. And it also includes your medical data on it to streamline healthcare costs. That was actually something that former President George W. Bush floated right after the terrorist attack of September 11th to both aid, like streamline Medicare costs. I think Rand's assessment in 2005 at that time was that it would save 80 to 90 billion dollars a year in medical care costs in 2005 dollars. I don't know what that is to today. It's a lot more thanks to inflation. So, I mean, there's a lot of different issues here. A lot of the leftists, when they are flipping areas or they think they're flipping areas, push for direct democracies because those seditious assholes view those institutions as impediments to what they want to do. And they're not wrong because they're seditious assholes, and those things are there to guard us against shit just like that. Bang that. If that's the non-kinetic way of resolving that. Otherwise, it gets resolved kinetically. And they're going to find out they're not going to be on the winning side of that.
Thank you, Jeff. Elisa?
Hello. So this has been a really interesting conversation. Can I share my screen again real quick?
Yes,
Sure, go
I'm
ahead.
gonna allow screen sharing. Go ahead.
Okay. So I want this one. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right, great. So, this is the exact reason why I am in favor of Electoral College. Out of the 50 states in America, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blue states. All of these other states are red. This is New Mexico, maybe a little more half and half. So 5.5. All right. So other than these 5.5 blue states, the rest of these states are red. And this is why we have the Electoral College, to protect all of these people in red counties from the lunatics in these blue counties. All right? So that's my point about that. That's number 1. Second of all, this whole the homeless should be allowed to vote is one of the most outlandish things I have heard this year in 2026. There are, here's the thing. the vast majority of homeless people, from my understanding, are drug addicts, right? Those people who are shooting up heroin on the street, the most compassionate thing you can do for those people is to get them off the street and either in a prison where they will have shelter, they will have 3 hot meals a day, they will have medical care, or an asylum. I'm I am so less concerned about their right to vote and more concerned about them getting clean off of heroin. So let's start there, number one, as opposed to this whole, but homeless people should be able to vote too. Homeless people need to get their act together. They need to get healthy. They need to get back on their feet. They need to be productive citizens again first. Then we can talk about their right to vote. But there's an order of operations here as far as that's concerned. All right. And then uh there was one more point. Oh, and then again, as far as the college students voting, um, like there is so much more to consider than just the fact of being an American citizen. That's not what's in dispute. What is in dispute is whether uh you whether you are qualified or whether it is fair for a college student who knows nothing to have their vote count just as much as a rancher who's been living in Texas not only for his entire life but for the past 5 6 generations of his family. You see what I'm saying? So I'm interested in protecting, the rights of the people who are in the minority. Because again, what is democracy? Democracy is you have 3 wolves and 1 sheep voting on what they're gonna have for dinner. The sheep loses every single time, right? Um and then there was something else I wanted to say to you. Oh, and then as far as universal suffrage being a mistake, and this will be my last point. Universal suffrage is a mistake because what you have today is you have people who are not net tax contributors voting more social welfare to themselves. Okay? That's why universal suffrage was a mistake. If you are in the bottom half or like that bottom percentage of earners where you're not a net tax contributor, you're a net taker overall, and you are allowed to vote more of those social programs to yourself paid for by taxes, that is where taxes being paid for by others and not for you. um I think that is inherently unfair. And again, there has to be a balance between protecting the rights of the people who actually pay taxes into the system and the people who on net don't contribute. They take from the system.
Thank you, Elisa. Dejal, you're next.
Yeah, this is an interesting topic. The whole thing about universal suffrage. There's a lot of good points here. There's an argument to be made against truly universal suffrage, depending on the types of groups we're talking about. I just have to say though, you mentioned the founders' vision of suffrage as they laid out in the Constitution. And their vision of suffrage was only white property owning males could do this. And I couldn't let that go. I just want to throw that out there. I don't know if you want to go strictly by that standard. I mean, we could if you want. I mean, I'm a white property owner, but I'm just saying. I just thought that was interesting. I just want to throw that out there. I mean, yeah, we can do that.
I'm not talking specifically about being a white property owner. I'm not suggesting we should go back to that specifically. That is not my point. My point is about being a net tax contributor overall, not based on if you're man or woman or skin color, based on having skin
You said
in the game.
founders. Okay, you said okay. I'm just saying you said founders. The founders' vision. Going back to the founders' vision. I couldn't let that go because I thought it was funny. Okay, like I get it. Okay,
That's why I clarified. I understand what you're saying.
Okay, fair enough. I couldn't let that go. Sorry. I just thought it was funny. The troll in me couldn't resist.
Thank you, Dajal. Armin, you're next.
Oh, I just wanted to read to you guys a poll that we put on YouTube regarding this topic. I put a poll asking the question, are you for or against universal suffrage? And 25% voted for and 75% voted against. So 75% against of the people vote. Okay, just wanted to read that poll.
Okay, Sam, you're up. Samantha?
Because like that's, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we
Not
can
very
hear you,
well.
but your audio is very muffly. Is that a word, or did I just make that up?
Yeah, give me literally 2 seconds to close this. Oh, okay, yeah. So I just want to say, this is a very far right group. So yeah, that's not like that poll's not a good accurate representation of what America in general thinks, because this is a very far right group. Like it could be accurate of what this group thinks, but this group is not accurate representation of America. I also want to say, I mean, do you guys really think that it would go over well if we took, voting away from 18, 19, 20-year olds? I mean, young, strong age demographic, that's kind of the more impulsive demographic. You want to take voting away from them and see like how
Samantha, I
crazy.
still don't understand what you're saying. Your audio quality has dropped significantly.
Sorry,
The
can
only
you?
part that I understood, is you calling the community far right, which is not an argument, by the way, which is a very far
Okay.
left thing to do. Okay,
Well, no, I'm just saying. Well, that's my argument for like this group isn't representative of like how the average American thinks. Like I think this group is for
but
the.
I don't know what you're responding to. Nobody claimed that it is. Like, do we?
Okay, sorry.
I mean, even if we weren't, even if we, I mean, I don't consider this group to be far right, but nobody, even if we were or weren't, nobody suggested that the poll on a YouTube channel is a scientifically representative demonstration of the average American view or the average anyone view. Like, I don't even know what you're responding to. Nobody suggested that the people in this on this YouTube channel are representing America as a whole.
Okay.
So I don't know what you were.
Okay.
I think it's a straw man. Yeah, it's a
Okay,
response
just
to an argument
forget.
that hasn't been made. Yeah, but go on.
Okay, just forget that part. Yeah. So back to the whole thing with like college kids and stuff. So I mean, the issue is like, let's say I'm a college kid. I'm going to college in Pennsylvania. I grew up my whole life in New York. I'm my parents' last child. As soon as I graduated high school, they sold the house and retired to Florida, and now I'm going to college in Pennsylvania. Like, I don't have a New York address anymore, so I can't vote in New York because my parents, like, I can't claim my parents' address because they retired to Florida. But like, if I claim my parents' address, I'd be claiming a Florida address when I never lived in Florida. So like, doesn't really make more sense. Like, how do you argue that like the address that doesn't make the most sense for me to vote in that case would be like Pennsylvania?
My name is Armin Navabi. I'm an Iranian political analyst with decades of experience fighting the Islamic regime inside and outside of Iran. Make sure you follow me for more, and also make sure you join our discussion group. I'm there almost every single day. Come talk to me there and the rest of the people there in our group calls. It's a great place to meet and talk to people who like talking about politics. The link is in the description and or in the bio. You could also get there by scanning the QR code on the screen. See you there.